Cyclo wiped the last smudge of oil off the polished face of the timepiece, feeling that satisfying sense of accomplishment. He always liked working with old clocks, especially the complicated ones like the rare pneumatic model he would just fixed. The challenge of working with air pressure instead of oil to swing the pendulum was like a puzzle. A broken gear, a slight bend, a little finesse, and voila, the clock was ticking again. But Cyclo was not one to boast. He never understood why people got so excited about his skill with clocks. "It is just what I do," he thought, shrugging it off as if anyone could do it with the right tools and a decent knowledge of gears. Still, the excitement buzzed in his veins. There was something almost magical about the way the clock ticked in perfect harmony now, with no oil dripping or wearing. Of course, Cyclo had to remind the owner that the thing would fall apart the moment it was moved, but that was half the fun, fixing something so delicate and fancy that it was basically a work of art, even if it could not travel more than a few inches without breaking. Before he could get lost in his thoughts, his workmate's voice startled him. The guild master was looking for him. Cyclo froze, the air around him suddenly heavy with that all-too-familiar sense of dread. His soul felt like it had just taken a sudden vacation from his body. He tried to laugh it off, but even he could tell his face was paler than usual. Just another day in the guild. It was one of those days where fixing clocks felt like the easy part. Cyclo trudged into the guild master's office, expecting a standard meeting or maybe a little praise for his work. Instead, the guild master delivered the news like he was reading a grocery list. Cyclo was fired, just like that. No warning, no explanation, just a cold dismissal. Cyclo stood there, blinking in disbelief. He was not sure if he would misheard or if someone had pulled a prank on him. Fired? After everything? He had kept the guild's supply room organized, fixed up the leaky roof last week, and even patched up the guild master's broken chair, something that surely counted for at least a good job in his book. But no, the guild master, with his usual scowl, insisted that Cyclo was incompetent and had no real skills. The final blow came when the guild master mentioned his son could fix the ancient clock sitting in the corner of the room. This, apparently, was the bar for competence. Fixing an old clock, and Cyclo, well, he could do everything else, but not that. The guild master practically kicked him out of the office without another word, dismissing his pleas for a discussion. As Cyclo shuffled out, muttering under his breath, he winced with each step, nursing his bruised ego. The door slammed shut behind him with an echo that seemed to mock him. So this was how it ended. No grand speeches, no redemption arc. Just a disgruntled clock enthusiast and an exit that felt a lot more like a push than a choice. He questions what he should do moving forward after getting fired. Cyclo took a slow, deliberate step forward, his eyes sweeping over the sprawling city that had once been full of promise. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows on the cobblestone streets as a gentle breeze ruffled his hair. He could not help but feel the weight of nostalgia settling on his shoulders. Life had been so much simpler in the past, hadn't it? Back then, everyone admired the magical tools he had crafted as a child. He had been a prodigy, no, a genius, really. His first creation, a small weather forecaster, had been a hit in the neighborhood. His mother especially had been thrilled. It helped her plan the laundry days, saving her time and effort. That little invention had won him the adoration of everyone around him. People would stop him in the streets, their eyes wide with awe, calling him a wonder kid and a genius. Parents even started eyeing him for their daughters, hoping to catch a little of that brilliance in their families. But things started to get weird once the talk of marriage came up. Cyclo chuckled bitterly at the memory. It was not long before he noticed the looks, the glances, the awkward pauses in conversation. Parents seemed to think that since he could build a weather machine, he would be a perfect match for any girl. But that's when his sister Alice started pushing him. 2 years ago, she would ask him no, told him to hurry up. Get serious, Cyclo. Cyclo had told her to slow down. He was not ready to settle down, not with all the inventions he still wanted to tinker with. Besides, Maria, his childhood friend, hadn't even caught up with her own dreams yet. Cyclo glanced over his shoulder, catching Maria's eye. She was standing just behind him, a soft chuckle escaping her lips. The same Maria who'd always been there, just a step behind, but always with him through thick and thin. She still had that same mischievous grin, like she knew exactly what he was thinking. Maria wondered if their daughter would be like Alice. Cyclo blushed immediately after Maria's remarks. Maria reminded him that they were fiancés, but Cyclo mentioned that it was only their parents' decision when they were only 10. She asked him if he disliked her, which Cyclo denied. Alice grabbed their hands and asked them to hurry out. The three were excited to go to the skill selection ceremony. Citizens of Heinberg would always participate in the ceremony when they turned 16. Teenagers their age gathered inside the church, while significant people from different guilds attended to witness the ceremony. The three were surprised to see many people who planned to scout talents at the ceremony. Their skills would appear in the crystal after they prayed earnestly before it. Maria went first while they wished her good luck as she prayed. The crystal emanated a blinding light. The priest was astonished to witness the result. She announced that the saint appeared in the form of Maria. Alice and Cyclo were still reeling from the fact that Maria had gotten one of those rare professional skills. They stood there, mouths slightly agape, while Cyclo tried to wrap his head around it. He was not exactly sure how it worked, but he knew that these kinds of skills were no joke. There were two kinds: general skills, which were the everyday kind that anyone could stumble upon, and professional skills, which were essentially the universe's way of saying, "He has got this skill, now go work in this specific job for the rest of your life." Cyclo explained all of this with the kind of solemnity that made it sound like a giant cosmic decision had just been made about their futures, which honestly, it probably had. The thing about professional skills was that they were rare, like unicorn rare, and you had to be pretty much stuck in a career that suited that skill for life. So Maria, getting one of those, was kind of a big deal. Cyclo mentioned it a few more times, just in case they missed the magnitude of it. But Alice was not exactly fazed. She was more concerned with the fact that Cyclo was dragging his feet when it was time to go to the ceremony. He kept mumbling about needing more time, probably stalling or trying to come up with a strategy, when Alice decided she would had enough. Without another word, she marched right up and said she will go first. She could not help but laugh a little as she casually threw out some excuse about it being her decision, then added, with a wink, that Cyclo shouldn't get any ideas about her secretly being a hero. He tried to reassure her as he placed his hand on her shoulder. Tears welled up in Alice's eyes, which confirmed her worries. She stepped forward while Maria and Cyclo celebrated. Alice promised that she would not lose to a saint like Maria. She prayed earnestly. Then another significant profession appeared. The priest was in immense shock, while the crowd cheered after a sage appeared in the form of Alice. The others were so excited and wanted a rare skill as well. Alice was surprised after learning that she possessed a sage skill. Cyclo was also in, since sage was the highest level skill in the magician and alchemist categories. Cyclo stepped forward to take his turn. Alice and Maria wished him good luck. Cyclo stood before the priest and hoped that he also obtained a special skill, so he would not lose to Alice and Maria. Blinding rays of light spilled from inside the church, which caused shock among the people at the ceremony. In an astral encounter, a divine being heard Cyclo's plea and asked for his answer. They questioned him about why he asked for a special power. Cyclo paused momentarily and thought about his loved ones. His face lit up, and he answered that he wanted to make his family and everyone happy. An unprecedented situation emerged at the ceremony. Cyclo returned to his consciousness and wondered if it was a dream. He questioned the priest. "What is your skill?" The priest revealed, "I am a clockmaker." Confusion filled Cyclo's face after hearing a profession that was unheard of. The onlookers assumed that it meant someone who simply handled clocks. They thought his skill was lame. But the priest told him, "The clockmaker is the caretaker of the massive clock tower, which was built from the god's song that created the world." Cyclo's confusion intensified when the priest confirmed that his skill was rare and it was the first in history. The priest moved on to the next person, which did not satisfy Cyclo's confusion. His evaluation was abysmal as a clockmaker. His engagement to Maria was cancelled as many were against it. They explained that a saint should not settle with a clockmaker. Cyclo grabbed Maria's hands and showed his determination. He promised to become the world's best clockmaker and would come back to Maria. She acknowledged his promise and waited for him. Meanwhile, Alice had been scouted by the Adventurers Guild, which fast-tracked her career. Their Mon and Cyclo bid farewell to Alice. He promised to be always there for her. Things got tougher. She acted tough to hide her emotions as she left. Cyclo knew in himself that he needed to do his best in order to keep up with Maria and Alice. Meanwhile, their Mon prepared his favorite meat pie to celebrate Cyclo's job at the Craftsman's Guild, which would start the next day. The guild master was only compelled by the law to hire Cyclo and warned him not to slack off, although there were others who saw his value and praised his work. A nobleman thought that his potential to become an excellent magic tool magician went to waste. Cyclo just accepted his fate as he listened to the nobleman. His skills as a clockmaker literally meant that he could do anything related to clocks, such as appraisal skills and stopping a clock. He also had other skills such as clockmaking and clock storage, where he could store timepiece parts, which he could store in a different dimension. He could also sense the whereabouts of people with a watch using his clock sensing. Maria and Alice, who were by his side, had gone ahead with their separate lives. He felt like he was left on his own by his loved ones. He found himself being hindered by massive gears and unable to move forward like the rest. Even without being a clockmaker, Cyclo took time to reflect on his fate under the pouring rain in the middle of the street. He overhears people talking about a predatory offender roaming around the city. The women notice Cyclo walking under the rain and wonder if he is okay. Cyclo is immersed in his thoughts as he questions what could possibly be enjoyable about doing such vile acts. He notes that it does not matter anyway. Meanwhile, a mysterious man in a raincoat looks at him. Cyclo finally arrives at his home. Miranda, their next-door neighbor, welcomes him back home. She notices that he is soaking wet and asks him to change immediately. Shortly, Miranda gives him a cup of a hot drink. She has always been kind to him and Alice since they were children. She takes care of Cyclo since his mom ran away with a guy whom she falls in love with. He notices something in the mug. Gear logos are printed on the mug that Miranda brings from the tool shop. He drinks quietly until Miranda asks him if he got into a fight at the guild. Cyclo refuses to talk about it. Miranda looks at him with compassion, but he insists that he is fine. She carries a smile and tells Cyclo that there are things that only he can do. Tears well up in his eyes, and he calmly holds the mug she bought for him. He then jokes that the herbal tea is a bit salty. The mood lights up while Miranda and Cyclo carry a smile. The next day, Cyclo delivers some groceries. His spirits lift a bit thanks to Miranda, and he decides to look for a new job. He thinks of asking a former customer of his to put in a good word for him. However, most of the customers would not even let him in the door without a recommendation letter from the guild. He suddenly notices voices talking about a plan. The men nearby discuss a certain incident from the previous day. Cyclo uses his clock detection skill and finds out that there are people around the stairs. Someone orders the others to take advantage of a shop mistress of a lone pharmacy in the middle of a residential area. Cyclo feels anxious and disgusted while he listens to the men planning to clear the people out in exchange for money. Thugs discuss in the back alley and ask who exactly is the target. Cyclo suddenly realizes that their target is Miranda, which causes alarm in him. He feels anxious, dread, and worries about Miranda. Cyclo tries to stop himself from jumping on the thugs, but he remains calm. The thugs mention that a commotion is unlikely to happen in a residential area. A man wearing a police badge tells them not to worry since there are plenty of ways to silence them. Luyan, a nobleman, explicitly introduces himself as a policeman and emphasizes his power. Cyclo is shocked after finding out the man's profession. He tries to think of what to do next until he bumps into something, causing a noise. The thugs are alarmed while the police officer lurks behind the wall to check the noise. He carries a sinister smile and asks him what is wrong. Cyclo falls to the ground and panics while Luyan shares that he is in the middle of an investigation. The police officer displays an ominous look and notes that it is rare to find someone wandering late at night. Cyclo's panic intensifies after meeting the police officer eye to eye. Cyclo immediately runs away while Luyan stands there and lets him. The police officer remembers that Cyclo was in the shop and finds him useful. A desperate voice reverberates through the police station. Cyclo reports the incident and the policeman he encounters, but the authorities do not believe him. They keep a record of his report just in case something happens. The policeman at the station then asks for his profession. His hesitation displays until he reveals that he is unemployed. The policemen look alarmed after hearing that he is jobless. The table turns on him, and it sounds like he is the one being suspected. It is unlikely to be unemployed unless there are serious issues with one's character. The authorities decide to stay on guard to appease him. Cyclo walks away and realizes that he is completely untrusted. He decides to take matters into his own hands. Cyclo is determined to interrupt their plan and plans to make a scene to gather witnesses. Late at night, Cyclo senses the presence of the policeman from the alley. Luyan stands before the door and is about to open it. Cyclo rushes into the policeman with nothing but his determination. He grabs Luyan from behind, screaming for help, which alarms the neighbors nearby. Cyclo looks accomplished, but he does not know that he falls into Luyan's trap. The policeman grabs Cyclo and orders him to stay still. Miranda goes out of the house to check the commotion, while Luyan immediately asks her to call the other officers and accuses Cyclo of being a predator. The latter freezes in shock after being blamed for something he does not do. Miranda was stunned by the accusation made against Cyclo. The latter tried to explain himself, but Luyan pinned his head down to restrain him. People gathered around while Cyclo realized that he was caught red-handed despite his innocence. He reached for Miranda and hoped that she did not get the wrong idea. He reflected on his desire to make everyone happy within his ability. The gear came loose from the rest, signifying the end of his dreams. He was desperate to assert his innocence. Miranda was in immense shock after hearing the horrible crime being accused of by Cyclo. She could only imagine Alice being disappointed in him. In the midst of malice, the trial had finally commenced inside the court. Cyclo's resistance displayed with his arms chained. He let out a guttural scream while trying to deny the accusation against him. The judge acknowledged his claims with doubt. Cyclo was shocked when Leon testified against him. Cyclo remembered vividly his previous confrontation with the police officer. His rage displayed while accusing Leon as the culprit, but the judge kept him silent. Leon claimed that Cyclo paid the street thugs to clear the area while they were already aware of the repeated acts of assault from their investigation. Cyclo's frustration intensified as he realized that Leon tried to pin the blame on him. The spectators looked at Cyclo with disgust. Miranda was also in the crowd and was still in utter shock. Cyclo realized that there were a lot of spectators for a summary trial, and everyone was connected to the women who suffered. His worries about being blamed for a serious crime intensified, and Leon called for the witnesses to come forward. Maria and Raven, who were heroes, arrived at the scene to testify. The spectators were astounded to see them like celebrities. Cyclo was shocked to learn that Maria was against him. A moment of silence filled the court while the hero called for the worried Maria. He tapped her shoulder and asked her not to worry. He reminded her to tell the truth with confidence, to which she confirmed that she would while she carried a smile. The spectators gushed over the love team and speculated that they would tie the knot soon. Maria testified against her former fiancé and revealed that she included cash with the letter since she figured that life would be tough with a time manipulator skill. Confusion filled Cyclo's face after hearing Maria's testimony. Cyclo was completely clueless while Leon mentioned that there were records of funds sent to the church. Cyclo denied the accusation while the spectators continued to judge him. Leon suddenly announced that his accomplice was in the court as well. A thug corroborated the accusation that Cyclo gave him cash and asked him to clear the area. Miranda was shocked and started to believe the accusations against Cyclo. Maria kept her composure while Cyclo desperately denied that he knew the thug. He was rendered speechless when Maria accused him of calling the church and her liars in hopes that he owns up to his mistakes and shows remorse. Maria looked at her former fiancé ominously and called him the worst. Cyclo's shock was evident. He recounted Maria's promise to wait for him. Cyclo desperately reached out for her while the hero warned him not to get any closer. He desperately shouted as nobody believed him. He suddenly noticed Miranda in the middle of the crowd. He suddenly saw a glimpse of hope and asked her to testify for him. She looked away with disgust in her face, causing Cyclo's hope to immediately fade away. A realization struck him while being surrounded by a police officer, a saint, and a hero. Cyclo, who was a time manipulator, finally received the verdict. He noted that nobody would take the words of someone with a cursed skill while he was sent to exile in the outskirts. Leon delivered him to his cell and thanked him for being his stand-in. He moved closer to Cyclo and asked if he said something. He gave him a terrifying look and promised to send him to hell as revenge. Leon carried a menacing smile while insulting Cyclo. He ordered the warden to keep him securely locked up. He finally returned to the court where voices of admiration reverberated through the hallway. Women admired and gushed over the hero for appearing in court. Leon interrupted the fan meeting and informed the hero that they needed to discuss the procedures for transporting the criminals. The women were in awe as the Raven and Leon, both coming from noble families, led the scene. A relieved voice mentioned that he did not expect that things would go smoothly. Raven admitted that Cyclo was also a thorn in his side. Leon questioned how he got Maria to give such a testimony, to which Raven responded that it was just a fact. He shared that he had no idea that the church guy was embezzling and burning letters. He thanked Leon for getting rid of Cyclo and prepared to comfort Maria, who was currently heartbroken. The two exchanged compliments while mentioning each other's powerful families. The two displayed their vile behavior as they agreed with their common desire to have their ways with women. The two noblemen celebrated their victory against Cyclo without them knowing that someone was spying on them. Meanwhile, a carriage traveled outside the city. Cyclo sat inside with boxes around him. The carriage traveled north of the kingdom of Heinberg, where an infamous place lies, the dreaded dungeon known as the Deep Hole. It awaits Cyclo, where no soul has ever reached its abyssal depth. It is a place where adventurers rise to the challenge and slay the wicked beasts that emerge from the dungeon. The bounty was so profitable that it fueled the growth of the northern frontier, North America. At the Adventurers Guild, the officer scolds Cyclone to stop dawdling and get moving. The receptionist was suddenly alerted to the arrival of a fresh face. The adventurers welcomed Cyclone with a menacing look. He looked depressed as he finally arrived as the new baggage handler, with a new title, the Crime Slave. Guan, who is the guild master, introduced himself. He took a look at Cyclone with seriousness. Cyclone suddenly regained his spirit as Guan mentioned that he heard tales about him from Alice. Cyclone hoped to get special treatment since he was related to Alice. However, Guan noted that her brother was an utterly hopeless fool. Cyclone tried to deny it, but Guan insisted that it was not a lie and the great sage had spoken time and again. Cyclone could not believe that his sister turned on him. He was in utter shock while Guan promised not to give him any mercy and planned to use him like a slave until his last breath. Meanwhile, a group of menacing adventurers gave him a hard time. Cyclone's legs shook over the rocky surface. The adventurers ordered him to get moving, calling him useless. Cyclone kept his mouth shut until the adventurer splashed water on him and displayed his impatience. His situation was like that of an animal, as he slept amongst rats. As he slept, his last string of hope finally broke. The next day, he carried on his life as the baggage man of adventurers. They started to get annoyed by Cyclone and threw him an insult. Cyclone had become a yes man while looking beaten up. The adventurer snapped and punched Cyclone in the face while he noted that he started to not care anymore. He accepted the fact that he would end up like a worn-out rag. The adventurer grabbed Cyclone and showed him the entrance to the deep hole. Cyclone remained unresponsive while the A-rank adventurer complained about going through all the trouble to bring him to the deep hole. The adventurer made Cyclone take a better look while the others laughed at his dull reactions. He wondered why he could not just fall into the abyss and simply end his suffering. Lunion's face appeared in his vision and mocked him for taking the fall for his sins. Cyclone suddenly regained his resolve. He started resisting and decided not to die without taking revenge. The adventurer holding him got pissed off and pushed him down. Cyclone fell into the abyss of the deep hole. He landed on a flowing river while his pain was visible on his face. Inside the vast cave, Cyclone was in disbelief that he was alive. He thought he did not care to live anymore until he almost met his death. He wondered if he got caught in a spider web, which slowed down his fall. He was light on his feet, and passing out turned out to be a stroke of luck for him. Cyclone then acknowledged that he managed to survive his ordeal. He decided to sort out the situation as he used time creation. He learned that it had been over half a day since the fall and thought that rescue would not arrive soon. Good thing the water was drinkable since he did not have any supplies on him. He then prepared for the monsters inside the deep hole. Cyclone believed that he stumbled upon an unexplored layer of the deep hole and tread carefully. Something suddenly fell on his head, which startled him. He looked up and saw a silhouette figure above a behemoth devouring another monster aggressively, which caused Cyclone's shock. The monster closed its flower bowl-like mouth and let out a disgusting belch. Cyclone was in utter shock and confusion after seeing the monster that was gobbling another monster bigger than him. He was shivering in fear and planned his escape while the monster's eyeball hovered behind him. He turned around and froze in terror with his eye-to-eye contact with the monster's eyeball. Cyclone ran desperately in fear while the monster crawled after him. He suddenly saw a tiny hole as he ran in panic. Cyclone immediately jumped into the hole as the monster struck the rocky walls. The monster's stinger pierced through the wall, which almost hit Cyclone's face. He panted heavily inside the narrow passage while the behemoth tried to lurk through the hole. Cyclone realized that he was saved since the monster could not reach him anymore. He suddenly saw a light at the end of the cave, which made him believe that he could finally escape the deep hole. However, he realized that suffering only awaited him outside. Inside the deep hole, Cyclone remained, and it had been 5 days since the behemoth waited for him in the shadows. He recalled the last time he had a meal and remembered his mom's delicious meat pie. Cyclone felt his stomach rumbling, which made him so weak. His sister's voice suddenly echoed through his head as she pointed out his suffering. He saw a vision of Alice and Maria encouraging him to come out so he did not suffer anymore. The sudden slip of hope caused him to stand up and follow the light. Their faces suddenly changed into menacing ones while calling him useless. This caused him to pause in disappointment. His frustration displayed after realizing they were just illusions and made him almost come outside. He suddenly turned his eyes on a reptile. Cyclone closed his eyes to apologize and immediately caught the lizard. Cyclone decided to devour the lizard alive so he could fill his stomach. He sat in disgust as he tried to stomach his situation. Suddenly, he noticed the tail of the lizard he just ate. Cyclo suddenly fell into a realization about himself. He reflected on being tossed aside for being a nuisance. He wallowed in self-pity for not being able to defend himself. He compared himself with his sister, who was a mage, and his childhood friend, who was a saint. He recalled being belittled by many and called him worthless. Visions of the nobleman and Maria flashed before him as he relived his trial. Cyclo continued to punch the cave walls as he expressed his frustration. He vowed a vengeance against the people who wronged him and promised to survive. He let out a desperate and guttural scream as he refused to die inside the deep hole. A massive beam of light suddenly shot into the sky. The guards were perplexed and immediately reported the strange beam of light to their boss. Guan suddenly sensed a strange feeling after the surge of energy emerged. Cyclo's surroundings lit up while a magic circle enclosed him. He was perplexed by what was happening and noticed the light he held in his hands. Cyclo's hunger and his hand injury had suddenly vanished. He thought it was the lizard that he just ate, but he knew that his belly clock would have stopped. He suddenly called on his belly clock, asking it to take him back to his prime. He closed his eyes as he used his time manipulation skill. Cyclo then froze time. He could feel his spirit and strength overflowing. He planned to anchor himself in the same state, which enabled him to survive on water alone. He planned to take down the monster at the exit. Cyclo now had ample time to devise an escape plan. He recounted that his skills were only suited for mechanical clocks. He believed that his time manipulation skill was expanding since he had been using it frequently. Cyclo entertained the idea of controlling anything with a clock in its name. He started his training right away. Cyclo created a water clock and an hourglass, and everything started with perfectly understanding the structure of each clock. Then he channeled magic into water and sand to control them. Cyclo infused his life energy next into the sundial, which he called the sphere of sunlight. However, he had his own limitations based on the size of the sundial. He could create sundials, but he had his own limitations based on the size of the sundial. He trained his own stamina so he could magnify his magic. A month has flown by in building his stamina. Cyclo used time creation again. He displayed his determination to focus his mind, then cast his spell to freeze time. He finally manifested just the right amount of magic based on his expectations. Cyclo was satisfied and immediately took on the first step. He then studied how he could apply everything to the battle. He had narrowed down his research to sand timers, water clocks, and sundials. The clock detection accuracy took a hit while he needed something else to serve as an eye. He suddenly got an idea upon looking at the shadow. Cyclo felt like he had been whisked back into his childhood. He recounted his innocence while making magic tools back then, except that revenge was his sole motivation now. He was determined to level up his skill to show everyone that they had crossed the wrong person. 2 months had flown by since Cyclo had dove into the world of skill research. He felt exhilarated after accomplishing so many challenges. All there was left now was to take down Lian while he used his time detection and creation skills. His training gave him the ability to sense everything within a certain radius. Cyclo managed to learn how to pinpoint any living target with liquid flowing through its veins. He pointed his finger as he used time creation. The glowing ore captured the shadows created by light to detect movement, giving him the ability to grasp what lies where. He saw the monster at the exit, which seemed to be sharpening its claws. The monster suddenly managed to break the cave walls, causing an alarm from Cyclo. His shock filled the surroundings as the monster let out a guttural scream. The behemoth lurked through the hole with its sharp claws and salivating mouth. The monster finally broke through the wall, causing Cyclo's baffled reaction. He realized that the monster was stealthily chiseling away at the rock without him noticing it. Cyclo punched his leg and asked it not to get in at such a critical time. His determination displayed as he summoned the clock. The monster's single-eyed membrane, dangling from a tentacle with shark claws, slithered, attacking Cyclo. He unexpectedly thanked his slate collar, made out of metal, for saving him from the attack. He made his move to deal with the monster's eye. Cyclo used his time creation skill while the eye slithered in the air. He used the hourglass concept and generated sand that launched at lightning speed. The monster's eye and its tentacle dissolved into thin air. The monster let out a guttural scream, which caused Cyclo to celebrate. He suddenly noticed something strange until shock filled his eyes. The monster went berserk inside the cave and smashed the walls. Cyclo tried to dodge the falling debris and realized that it was just backfiring on him. He noticed that the hole by the cliff had been sealed shut in the midst of darkness. Cyclo found himself in a dire situation and believed that he had met his end. However, his determined eyes said otherwise. He suddenly noticed that the attacks had stopped. Cyclo struggled to see the monster that was lost in the shadows. He then used his time detection skill, enabling him to see the monster's location clearly. Light emanated from him as he prepared to make a strike. The monster was dismembered and caught within Cyclo's time magic. The behemoth let out a guttural scream as it met its end. Cyclo sliced his enemy using his sundal's razor-sharp hand, his disbelief displayed after executing his magic for the first time. Cyclo used his time detection skill to check on the monster. He found out that the monster's life signs were in complete stasis until it hit 0. Tears welled up from his eyes, and he celebrated his victory after confirming that he defeated the monster. Cyclo finally realized that his time manipulation skill was not useless and discovered its full potential. Suddenly, he sensed something within. Hot energy was surging through his body, and he realized that he was leveling up. Cyclo's level suddenly shot up after taking down the monster. He kept growing the more monsters he killed. He suddenly broke free from his past and officially started his vengeance, surrounded by monsters inside the deep hole. Cyclo carried a wide grin as he kept moving and rising up. The monster started to attack him while Cyclo was determined to bring them all down in a blaze of glory. The behemoth's body was disassembled. Cyclo used his ability to slice and dice the monsters with the swift water blade. Another monster lunged at him, dodging it effortlessly as he mocked the behemoth. Cyclo believed that he could see their attacks more clearly due to him leveling up. Their tentacles launched like whiplash assaults at Cyclo. He cast his time creation, blocking the lashing tentacles. He used the water clock as his own shield, which showed his creativity, and the art of the sundal as his sword. His clock creation skill enabled him to shape not just clocks but parts into any design he desired. He flashed a razor-sharp edge of mountain copper, splitting the monster in half. He sensed incoming attacks from other monsters using time detection, but their attempts were failed as Cyclo immediately used his clock creation, which sliced the monsters. He continued to level up, which caused the magical energy to pour up like a wild river. An impending force suddenly approached Cyclo. The final boss appeared before him while he looked at it confidently. The monster struck with its sharp claws, which Cyclo effortlessly dodged with his clock creation. Cyclo counterattacked with multiple blades. The monster surprisingly used its tentacles to guard itself from the blades. Cyclo acknowledged that the final boss was smarter than the others he fought. Cyclo used his clock creation until the behemoth's tentacles died into the ground. Cyclo expressed his alarm as the monster made its move. He prepared for the worst since his shield had already taken too much strain. He pretended to make a desperate plea as the monster attacked him. Cyclo grinned menacingly in the midst of darkness. He invoked a massive ball of energy using time creation. The monster's tentacles crashed into the ground. He mocked the behemoth, who was unfortunate since he had flawless senses. He was confident that he could always sense the monster as long as there was blood flowing in its veins. Cyclo prepared to do his payback and revealed the finest sundal one has ever seen. A massive explosion erupted within the cave, which devoured the monster, causing it to scream in immense pain. Cyclo carried a stern gaze, stepping forward to finish the job. The monsters lurking in the shadows ran away from him. He laughed at how the tables had turned from the time when the behemoth was chasing after him. He used his time creation again and ensured not to let the monsters escape. He could not sense any signs of monsters nearby after using his time detection skill. Cyclo decided to collect the loot using his time storage, which now could store nearly limitless treasures. After gathering the materials, he poured a beverage using his time magic. He refreshed himself with a drink after an intense battle. He took out a cube as he took the chance to recover his stamina while he could. Cyclo managed to invent an energy cube where he could store his life energy in the clock storage, which restored his stamina. The collection of the loot had finally been completed. Cyclo immediately made his move to set off. He suddenly paused after finding withering flowers on the ground. He picked up the rare find, which did not normally thrive in the cave. Cyclo paused for a moment and used his time manipulation. The flowers suddenly flourished. He saw himself in the flowers and became more determined to thrive. Cyclo reflected on seeing something beautiful for the first time after his banishment from the royal capital. Cyclo traveled through the deep hole until he saw the staircase leading up. He prepared himself for a relentless climb to the top. He dealt with tons of monsters along the way, managing to defeat all of them using his time magic. Cyclo suddenly found himself inside a room with a large magic circle engraved on the floor. He learned that there was no sign of life inside the room after using time detection. Shock filled his face until he heard an ominous voice expressing their astonishment at seeing a human from the depths of the deep hole. Cyclo sensed danger and immediately equipped himself with his weapon, but the mysterious being told him not to rush things. The creature introduced themselves as the guardian of the mid-layers in the labyrinth of judgment. Power suddenly surged before Cyclo. The elder race revealed their form with a forceful aura. The guardian laughed ominously as they made their entrance. Cyclo acknowledged the danger he was in as he sensed that the guardian's power was incomparable against the monsters she fought earlier. Cyclo was astonished to learn that he was still just at the middle level of the deep hole. The guardian informed him that his fate was sealed since Cyclo had crossed paths with him. The guardian declared that they shall seize his life with all its vitality. Cyclo counterattacked the guardian with his time creation. He felt the heat of the enemy's attack on his hand. His magic wavered as he lost his focus. The guardian laughed menacingly as they intended to burn Cyclo to ashes. The enemy suddenly paused while Cyclo barely managed to block the enemy's attack. He assumed that the enemy was a spirit type since he could not sense any liquid flowing through their veins. The guardian's condescending attitude fueled Cyclo's determination as he made his counterattack. The guardian was perplexed after Cyclo managed to land a strike on their cape. The enemy paused for a moment until an explosion followed. Cyclo celebrated after his attack successfully worked. The guardian displayed their confusion after encountering a human who wields a magic that can hurt them. Cyclo told them to shut up and ordered the enemy to perish already while he summoned multiple clock magic. The guardian was perplexed upon seeing his immense power. His magic pierced the guardian's form while displaying their confusion as they vanished. The guardian turned into ashes instead of Cyclo, and Cyclo carried a smile while in disbelief after defeating the enemy. Cyclo commented that the guardian was not as hard to defeat as he thought. He stepped forward and decided to collect the enemy's corpse. The guardian's eye lit up suddenly, surrounding Cyclo with their ethereal haze, causing his alarm. It turned out that Cyclo had fallen into the guardian's trap. He realized that he was faced with an elite fiend called a wraith, who infiltrates humans and makes them puppets. The wraith is impressed that Cyclo has made it far in a battle with them. The enemy is determined to curse Cyclo to death and use his body as their new vessel. He lets out a guttural scream as the fiend's claws pierce his heart. Cyclo feels the immense pain of the fiend's curse, like their heart is being raked by shark claws. The guardian slowly takes their new form and mocks Cyclo. They repeatedly ask him what he is going to do as he falls into his curse. Cyclo displays his determination and notes that he can't afford to hesitate at this moment. He uses his clock creation skill. Cyclo intends to bring the enemy down with him and confidently asks which one of them will burn to a crisp first. Cyclo challenges the fiend and sees which one of them can endure the battle of wills, shocking the enemy. They pause for a moment and wonder if Cyclo is insane. Cyclo reminds himself of how far he has come after withstanding his own curse. His determination displays in his eyes, refusing to give up. With one more push away, Cyclo and the fiend clash in a fierce and screaming duel of strength. A winner has finally prevailed. Cyclo's hands are hanging after the intense game of tug-of-war. The fiend finally confirms that the possession has been completed. The enemy notes that it has been ages since he has feasted on humans. Cyclo's body looks like that of a zombie until a flame feels a sudden resistance. Cyclo brings out his energy cubes while noting the possibility of devouring a human. He forces the fiend to take the cubes while contemplating his next action, which will turn him into a real criminal. The fiend questions what he plans to do and belittles his energy cubes without knowing their capabilities. The fiend, in the form of Cyclo, suddenly pauses. He manages to kick the spirit away from his body, effectively casting them aside. Cyclo keeps his cool while the fiend expresses his confusion about his power. He carries a stern gaze with his clock eye. His determination intensifies as he expresses his desire to escape the deep hole and take his revenge against the world that denied his existence. The fiend stops him with his foolish ramblings and declares that his world will end right there and then. The two creatures use their magic power for another intense confrontation. The fiends screamed in agony as they slowly turned into ashes. They let out their final curses against Cyclo just moments before they perished from existence. A piece of the fiend's form was left bouncing on the ground while mentioning that it was a close call. Cyclo used his magic to completely annihilate any last remaining piece of the fiend. He was finally relieved after ensuring his victory and thanked his energy cube, which saved his skin from the fiend's fiery magic. He then realized that there were still plenty of fierce monsters lurking beneath them. Cyclo acknowledged that his time manipulation skill was not flawless and still depended on who wielded it. He snapped out of it and made sure that he did not forget his weakness. Cyclo ended his brooding until he noticed something. He paused for a moment, getting a closer look at his reflection. Shock filled his face after seeing his hair turned white. He wondered if it was because of the curse and dealt with it as long as it did not cause him any harm. Cyclo resumed hitting the road, running towards the exit. He passed by other adventurers dealing with monsters while some set up tents to rest. He panted heavily until he reached the gate of the deep hole. Tears welled up from his face as he could not stop feeling emotional. Cyclo could not contain his happiness after finally returning to the outside world. The adventurers outside were perplexed, without knowing that Cyclo was the first human to explore the mid-level. Meanwhile, in the capital, the fates of those close to Cyclo had begun spiraling out of control. Meanwhile, Alice received a commendation for a successful quest. She bemoaned her brother and noted that she needed to step up. The impending twist in Cyclo's fate took a dramatic turn as only his unique ability could restore an ancient clock. Lydia, a noblewoman, carried a serious look while looking at the ancient timepiece. She was determined to find Cyclo immediately, expressing their need for the clockmaker's expertise. Cyclo had seen the barrier of Norway again after a while. He used his clock storage to bring out his dungeon exploration permit. He wondered if he was the only one who possessed the permit and had conquered the mid-level labyrinth. Cyclo displayed his excitement as the guard asked him to show his permit. The guard gave him a judgmental look, causing Cyclo's confusion. The guard ordered him to hurry up and enter while calling him a filthy crime slave in the middle of the street. Cyclo asked for the direction to the Adventurers Guild, but he was met with the same disgusted reaction by the civilians. Cyclo took a look at this state while the civilians asked him to stay away from them. Kids nearby threw a rock at him, which Cyclo managed to catch without him even looking. The civilians were baffled. All of a sudden, Cyclo realized that he would always be treated poorly for being a crime slave, no matter how incredible his skills were. He proceeded to carry on, while the civilians looked at him with contempt. Cyclo found his way to the guild and recognized an alley. Something suddenly caught his attention from a light in the corner. He carefully took a peek, causing him to react with astonishment. Cyclo saw a slight girl named Mist in the corner. Confusion arose from Cyclo, and he wondered what a kid was doing alone in an abandoned alley. Mist looked back at him, causing him to panic and apologize for staring so much. He carried a smile and asked for directions to the Adventurers Guild. She looked terrified, which Cyclo understood. The girl shivered in fear as she raised her hand. She pointed in the direction to show the way, lightening up Cyclo's expression. She continued and told him to head out and take the left staircase. He smiled and thanked her for helping him. Mist was rendered speechless while Cyclo described her like the white flower blooming in the depths of the labyrinth. He ran in the direction and thanked her in his thoughts, which enabled him to move forward again. Cyclo slammed the guild's door, causing surprise from the people inside. The adventurers who mistreated Cyclo recognized him. His face was filled with determination as he ordered the clerk to call the guild master immediately. Meanwhile, at the Craftsmen's Guild in the capital, the guild master expressed his frustration at the canceled contracts. His son tried to calm him down. The guild master's frustration only grew as he blamed his son after Olivia's precious clock was broken. The son put the blame on Cyclo for his shoddy repairs, which caused the clock to fall apart in the first place. Suddenly, a commotion erupted while people looked for the guild master. Outraged craftsmen gathered inside the guild. The men expressed their frustration for being exploited by the guild. They even complained about the chaotic assignments being assigned to them. The guild master screamed in frustration and ordered everyone to shut up. He discriminated against the workers and told them to be thankful for getting hired. He received nothing but silence from the craftsmen. The leader of the union finally got a clearer picture of what he was thinking now. The guild master ordered them to go back to work until the leader punched him, which knocked out the guild master. His son hid behind the curtain after seeing his dad get beaten up. The craftsmen resigned from the guild and found jobs on their own. The men expressed their disappointment that Cyclo was fired and believed that he was only framed for a crime he did not commit. The son asked his dad a dumb question if he was okay, which frustrated his dad and asked him to leave. The guild master crawled into the table, looking at the canceled requests from their clients. His frustration displayed as he ripped the documents apart. The guild master cried and wished that Cyclo was around to apologize to his customers. He then questioned the timekeeper's whereabouts. Meanwhile, Luyan walked freely while women were in awe of his presence. An old woman reminded Miranda to take things easy at the pharmacy until something caught her attention. Luyan greeted her with flowers as a gift for her. She apologized for bothering Luyan, but he insisted that it was his job to check the well-being of the citizens. Miranda shared that she still could not believe that Cyclo was a criminal. She still believed in his good heart and hoped that he bounced back. Luyan supported her hopes that Cyclo could rehabilitate himself with the help of his family's efforts. Immersed in his thoughts, Luyan could only wish that Cyclo was already dead as a criminal slave by now. Miranda thanked him while Luyan asked if she had considered his proposal, unaware that it concealed dark intentions. Miranda rode in a carriage and accepted Luyan's offer to visit his territory while she was traveling. He suggested that she needed a change in scenery right now. Miranda was flattered by his kindness. Suddenly, Miranda faced an impending danger as she traveled. A thug with a menacing smile entered the carriage, pointing a sharp knife at Miranda's neck. The thug called his back up while the stranger felt sorry for restraining her, which was part of his job. Miranda was frightened and hoped that Luyan would come to her rescue. Miranda was in great shock after hearing a familiar voice paying the thugs for their service. Luyan appeared at the scene while Miranda started panicking. Luyan looked at her with an ominous smile. A significant realization struck Miranda, who was fooled by Luyan and immediately wondered about Cyclo being wrongfully accused. Meanwhile, at the Adventurers Guild in Morphoria, Cyclo's identity was confirmed with his slate collar. He insisted that he was not an imposter and confirmed his identity. Guan clarified if Cyclo really came back from the deep hole. He confirmed and revealed that he got shoved down by the adventurers in the corner. They tried to deny his claim while Guan mentioned that the report stated that he fell off a cliff after a monster attacked him. Cyclo replied that it was not the case and he was subjected to endless torment by the menacing adventurers. He revealed that he only pretended to be shoved into the abyss when he actually plummeted. The menacing adventurers were facing charges in case Cyclo's claims were true while he reminded Guan of the falsehood in reporting what really happened. The menacing adventurers started to panic. Cyclo shared how much he had grown beneath the deep hole and ensured that they faced the necessary punishment. He carried an ominous gaze while he thanked them for what they did to him. The menacing adventurers got pissed off, causing them to attack Cyclo all at once. The other adventurers were in shock as the menacing group tried to kill Cyclo. However, he saw through their attack and told them that they were too slow. Cyclo blocked their attacks with his bare hands, causing the adventurers shock. Cyclo slammed his enemies against the wall with a powerful shove. He mentioned that they had to add attempted murder to the charges. The menacing adventurers' anger intensified until they saw themselves stuck in a glass compartment. Cyclo imprisoned them inside an hourglass, informing them that the sand would fall to the bottom in 10 minutes. Cyclo ordered them to confess the truth while they still had time. Guan returned to their conversation after being interrupted by the troublemakers. The guild master wanted to discuss how Cyclo made it back from the deep hole over a cup of tea. Cyclo shared everything that impressed Guan. The guild master wanted to believe his story, but he still needed proof, to which Cyclo decided to open his time storage. He brought out the behemoth's corpse, causing everyone a shock. They were baffled by the unknown monster and asked where Cyclo pulled it from. He innocently informed the guild master that he still had other proofs to show, but Guan said that what they saw was enough. He immediately asked his staff to bring the disassembly potion for the monster. Cyclo looks bored and hopes that the monster she brought could give him a hefty reward. The clerk suddenly asks if Cyclo dislikes the tea she just served. He suddenly apologizes, noting that he has too many bad memories flooding back from the tea as she remembers Miranda. Guan suddenly returns with the appraisal result. He slides the document on the table while sharing the rough estimate of his reward. He is shocked to see that it amounts to 10,000 gold coins or 100 platinum coins. He recounts that his annual salary was only around 1 platinum coin when he was just a watchmaker. He is in disbelief after having an annual income of 100 times over. Cyclo questions if Guan is sure, which the guild master confirms. Since the monsters she brought were all undiscovered, Cyclo is rendered speechless and looks away as he gets emotional. He wonders if he had only awakened the true potential of his skill as a timekeeper sooner, he would still be sharing a happy time with everyone he loved. He then grounds himself and decides to entertain the thoughts some other time. Guan pauses momentarily, then bows to Cyclo to apologize. He asks for his forgiveness after turning a blind eye to the bad treatment he experienced. He explained that he just chose what would benefit the guild and deprioritize his well-being for being a criminal slave. Guan insists that it was a necessary decision he had to make for the guild. Cyclo pauses momentarily, pointing out that Guan put his self-interest first. The guild master does not mind him saying those words to him. Cyclo is certain that the two will not become enemies and calls the guild master's attention. He makes a surprising request to buy himself out of slavery using his reward. Guan is shocked that Cyclo uses the restitution system. which allows criminal slaves to buy their freedom by paying an amount that corresponds to the weight of their crimes. Cyclo expresses his desire to be free and craves the qualifications of an adventurer. He carries a confident look, knowing that Guan will take on the request. The guild master confirms without a doubt. Cyclo breaks the slave collar with his finger and expresses his joy for being on the same page with the guild master. The next day, Cyclo wakes up in a good mood after finally sleeping in a bed again after ages. He takes a good look from the balcony, wondering about what happened to the slate girl he encountered last time. He starts to believe that she was just an illusion. At the Adventurers Guild, the clerk greets Cyclo and calls the master for him. He thanks her and notices that the service has changed a bit. Guan greets him as Cyclo expresses his desire to register as an adventurer. Guan informs him that they already took care of his registration and even opened a savings account under his name. Cyclo is relieved after not needing to do the process himself. Guan hands him his registration card. Cyclo questions what his rank is after seeing the Black Guild card, which is rare for him to see. Adventurers are ranked according to skills, and Cyclo was below rank F before when he was just a pack mule. Guan informs him that his guild card is the legendary black card and decides that it is better to show him in person his new rank using a new technology. His confusion displays after remembering that it does not look like a standard measuring device. Guan presents him with a custom-made system analyzer since the standard measuring device will not be enough for him. Cyclo sits on the device while Guan asks him if he knows how to use the analyzer. He displays his excitement after finally measuring his status. His desire to know his status intensifies while he starts operating the analyzer. Cyclo is eager to see how much stronger he has grown after the challenges he went through in the deep hole. The analyzer notes that his resistance defies fate and unleashes the mightiest force of life itself and reveals that his GID rank is SS. Cyclo's shock is evident in his eyes after seeing his rank. Guan mentions that his rank truly reflects his astonishing achievements. Cyclo's body jolts after Guan mentions his sister Alice, who is a renowned great sage. Guan notes that an S rank like her usually excels in just one area while the other stats hover around rank A or B. The guild master is impressed in Cyclo that his stats are a cut above the rest in every single rank. Guan mentions that it is a remarkable feat and is rare throughout history. Cyclo is astonished by the result and at a loss for words. Cyclo can't wrap his head around it while Guan addresses him warmly. The guild master asks for a favor from Cyclo if he could meet with the Lord of Northuria. His shock displays in his face after the sudden request. Guan reveals that the Lord perked up with curiosity after mentioning his experience in the deep hole. Cyclo pauses for a moment, realizing that it is a good opportunity to build connections with powerful people to get back at those who wronged him. Cyclo agrees to meet with the Lord of Northuria. Guan mentions that he needs to dress appropriately when meeting the Lord. Meanwhile, Cyclo is in great astonishment after going to a salon. A staff member welcomes him warmly inside the luxurious store. Cyclo is rendered speechless, then informs the staff that he is looking for something to wear while he shivers in shyness. The staff pauses for a moment after taking a look at Cyclo's guild card. She immediately rushes inside after learning that he is an SS rank adventurer. Afterward, her boss, who is a high-order tailor, appears and greets Cyclo with respect as he promises to create the finest clothes for him. Cyclo recognizes at a glance that he will do a great job and asks him how long he needs to create the gear. The tailor asks him to wait for a bit as he creates the gear. The master craftsman brings out his needle and string as he confidently prepares the gear for him. His hands move at an immense speed as he sews Cyclo's gear, causing his astonishment as if he is watching a maestro conducting an orchestra. The tailor thanks him for his patience as he drops his equipment. He can't believe his eyes after seeing a magnificent cloak. Cyclo likes the design, but something feels a bit lacking until the tailor asks him to place his hand on the cloak. He immediately obeys his instruction until patterns are magically embroidered on his cloak. His astonishment displays, feeling an incredible moment after putting the cloak on. The tailor informs him that the pattern reflects the essence of his magical power. He asks if his creation meets his expectations, which Cyclo confirms. The tailor is pleased by his compliments. The staff engages with Cyclo afterward, then he decides to buy some accessories to complete his getup. He leaves the store while the staff wishes him a fantastic adventure. The next day, inside a huge mansion, Guan and Cyclo wait in the living room for the Lord of Northuria. Suddenly, the Lord himself introduces himself and his son named Crus, dressed up like a doll. Cyclo introduces himself while his confusion displays upon looking at Crus, who looks visibly excited. Cress gets emotional while Deimos explains that his son has been dying to meet him since he wants to become an adventurer himself in the future. Cyclo's confusion intensifies upon observing Cress' unconventional way of dressing up. Deimos sits confidently and informs Cyclo that he summoned him due to 3 important matters. Cyclo turns serious and wants to say something before they dive into the details. He informs him that he wants equal treatment from both sides, regardless of their status. Cyclo confidently reminds the Lord that he was the one who needed something from him in the first place. Guan's anxious face displays while Cress can't help but admires Cyclo even more. Deimos carries a smile, accepting his condition as he does not want to act high and mighty in front of an SS-ranked adventurer after all. Cyclo looks at Guan to calm him down. Deimos gets to his first concern, which is to buy information about the deep hole from Cyclo. He informs him that he is prepared to pay 100 platinum coins, which shocks Cyclo. The Lord asks him for his opinion while Cyclo accepts the reward on the table. Meanwhile, Cyclo spends the next moment sharing the information about the deep hole with the Lord of North. Deimos thanks Cyclo for the significant information and can't believe that he fell in the mid-layer instead of the deep layer. Cyclo gets casual and reminds him of the reward that Deimos promised. He returns to being serious when the Lord proceeds to the next point of discussion. Deimos acknowledges that it is getting late, so he invites Cyclo for dinner to talk more, which will make Cress happy. Cyclo is about to refuse the offer until he sees Cress's disappointed reaction. The kid's expression turns excited when Cyclo changes his mind. Deimos then proceeds to discuss the second topic as they sit at the table. The Lord tells him directly that he does not believe that he is a criminal. Cyclo is rendered speechless. He questions if Deimos thinks that he is wrongfully accused. Deimos reveals that he took a look at the records and they were a mess, which puts him in disbelief for tarnishing an SS-ranked adventurer's name with a shoddy trial. Deimos disregards the capital's judgment and declares that Cyclo is a free spirit within the realms of Norththoria. Deimos tells him to keep the requests coming and continue working as an adventurer. Cyclo is in immense shock, describing the Lord as an oddball, which he admits that he gets a lot. Meanwhile, a luxurious dinner is served before Cyclo. Cress goes all out in treating him to their local cuisine, which causes Cyclo to apologize for bothering them. He then reflects on the last time he had a decent meal, which was a long time ago, since his stomach is fixed after using his time magic, so he won't get hungry. He admits to himself that the meal does not matter to him at this point. Cyclo is rendered speechless after he takes his first bite. His excitement displays in his actions as he rushes his meal. He hides his face while eating as he finally experiences a long-awaited desire to have a meal with someone special. Tears well up from his eyes as he can't contain his appreciation. Deimos and Cress carry a non-judgmental smile, asking if they can interest him in a refill. Cyclo wipes his tears and responds positively to their offer. Cyclo appreciates the fact that he is more trustworthy than the others, just a tiny bit. Cyclo continues to have a wonderful dinner with Deimos and Cress while the night sky sparkles outside the mansion. Deimos gets straight to the point with his last favor, which only Cyclo can perform since he is an SS-ranked adventurer. The Lord expresses his desire for an expedition to the deep hole. Cyclo immediately accepts the offer since he will also gain more experience, which is a win-win situation for him. Deimos is thrilled with his response and adds a request to his task. The Lord wants him to completely conquer the deep hole, which causes Cyclo to pause for a while. The request will shut down the dungeon completely once the monsters are extinct. Cyclo clarifies if the request is totally fine with the Lord since Norththorea's economy thrives thanks to the dungeon. Deimos confirms that Norththorea has flourished alongside the deep hole, however, the great calamity that strikes up the city also emerges from the dungeon. Cyclo understands and refers to the stampede where the monsters of the dungeon overflow into the surface. Deimos wants to prioritize the reduction of the risks if it means fully conquering the dungeon, which is a big part of their economy. Cyclo understands the situation as the city would be doomed if the monsters lurking in the depths were to spill out. He thinks about the people who could possibly be affected by the stampede. Cyclo questions how much the reward will be, while the Lord responds generously with whatever amount he wants. Cyclo is surprised by Deimos, while the Lord promises to repair the reward as long as he can manage it. Deimos sees the value of conquering the deep hole since they can protect the citizens from the looming threat of monsters. Cyclo carries a soft smile after hearing Deimos' opinion. He expresses his admiration for the nobleman, who is unlike the others he has known. The Lord informs him that there is something he needs to do as he embarks on the adventure. Cyclo is surprised to learn that Deimos is part of the party. He questions the need for his participation, knowing that he is fine on his own. Suddenly, his tragic past of betrayal comes back to him. Cyclo genuinely informs Deimos that he can't handle another betrayal. The Lord has already figured out his response, so he prepares just the perfect talent lined up for Cyclo in a special place. He admits that the recommendations from the elites of North Foria are top-notch while he glances at the large building. Deimos suggested that he get a slave bound by subjugation magic. At least he can trust them a bit. The slave trader welcomes him and encourages Cyclo to share any request he has. Cyclo informs the trader that he needs a slave for a dungeon-crawling crew. The slave shop is tucked away right behind the guild, which indicates that there is a cycle where slaves become adventurers and vice versa. He can't help but be impressed by the guild master's creativity, even though he does not want to admit it. The slave trader finally returns and offers the first set of slaves for dungeon crawling. He mentions that they were former B and C rank adventurers who are ready for action. The leader of the slaves displays his confidence while slightly mocking Cyclo. The latter thinks that the slave has a big attitude and a high pride. Cyclo asks the slave trader to introduce him to other slaves. His energy has been exhausted after a very long day of looking for the right slave. Cyclo then decides to change the conditions, mentioning that he needs a slave who is weak, but as obedient and easy to handle as possible. The slave trader mentions that criminal slaves and pleasure slaves are the types that can wield enslavement magic. Outside at adventurers, Cyclo notices that there seems to be another option. The trader reveals that there is an individual known as a status slave, who has fallen into servitude due to their professional skills. Cyclo is rendered speechless by the other slave type. He immediately asks the slave trader to bring the status slave to him. The slave shivers as she comes out. The slave trader mentions that the status slave is not the best option and is bound by the chains of her station. Cyclo takes a look carefully while the trader reveals that her profession is a heretic. It turns out that it is Mist, who looks visibly depressed. Cyclo immediately recognizes her as the girl from the dump. He notices that her appearance is in tatters and reflects on their living situation. Cyclo exudes an ominous vibe as he questions the slave trader about how she has been treated. The slave trader argues that by law, those cursed with occupational skills that defy the teachings of skill selection are not to be regarded as human beings. Cyclo suddenly remembers his tragic past when he was cursed with a time manipulator job. He wallows in self-pity as he compares himself to his sister, who is a sage, and his childhood friend, who is a priest. Cyclo thought that there was no one more unfortunate than he is. He admits that he is naive for ever thinking that way. He pities Mist's situation as a status slave. Cyclo openly objects to the nation's implementation of the caste system. Cyclo informs the slave trader that he will purchase Mist. The slave trader is in immense shock while Mist looks up in surprise as Cyclo asks the trader to prepare the arrangements. The trader understands the request and immediately processes the documents. Cyclo carries a warm smile and takes a closer look at Mist. He then asks for her name, to which Mist timidly answers. Cyclo raises his hand, which causes Mist to flinch. He notes that her name is lovely as he gently pats her head and introduces himself. He feels that Mist is trembling with fear, which Cyclo totally understands. He promises that he will never harm Mist, no matter what. Cyclo hugs her warmly, eliciting a shocked reaction from Mist. Cyclo declares that he will protect Mist and promises to chase away anyone who dares to hurt her. Tears well up from her eyes, then her nerves start to finally calm down. Mist remains emotional as she thanks Cyclo for his kindness. The slave trader informs him that the contract is ready for his approval and asks to channel his magic into the magic circle to seal the pact. Cyclo proceeds to the document, channeling his magic as asked by the slave trader. The latter is astonished upon seeing the incredible surge of magic from Cyclo. Light emanates from Mist, then an emblem appears on her neck, which is the mark of her enslavement contract. The slave trader informs him that he needs to channel his magic into the emblem when delivering punishment, but Cyclo is confident that he will not use it while freeing Mist from the shackles. Cyclo asks Mist to set off, but she is hesitant to touch him as she is afraid that he will get dirty. Cyclo ignores her hesitation and grabs her hand since she is already part of his crew. Mist woke up with a goal to help the priest at the church. She diligently wiped the glass window outside, despite the snow. The priest commended her diligence, while Mist asked if there was anything else she could help the church with. The priest asked her to head home already, since it was getting late. He reminded her that the Lord always watched over them. She felt emotional when the priest mentioned that she would gain some wonderful skills if she was a good girl. He was certain that the Lord would never abandon a good child. While Mist returned to her impoverished life, she carefully opened the door to their home. A loud voice suddenly scolded her for coming home late again. Her mom told her she would head out and asked Mist to tidy up the house for her. Her mom bumped her on the way out and complained about her life with kids. Mist picked up the broken plate on the floor while staying positive and keeping a good attitude. At the ceremony, a shocking revelation emerged about a rare skill Mist happened to obtain, a skill named Heretic. Mist could not believe the result, but the priest showed his disgust toward her. The onlookers judged her for having a cursed skill, while Mist remained shell-shocked. Mist was bound in shackles while reflecting on how God did not lift a finger for her, despite her best efforts. She looked helpless until she saw her mom amongst the crowd without a care. She recounted how abusive her mom was, causing her to just give up, since there was nothing she could do. Mist believed that she was a bad child and should not have been born at all. Nobody wanted her until she was thrown into the slave market. Her tragic life started as a slave then, and she apologized for her existence. Until one day, Cyclo became intrigued by her and her profession as a cultist. She relived the moment when Cyclo appeared before her, changing the trajectory of her miserable life. However, she tried to ground herself, believing that she was a bad kid. A vision of Cyclo appeared as he saved her from the abyss of her misery, promising her a life free from harm. He asked her to gather her courage and take the plunge. She finally let go of her worries and grabbed her new life by the hand. She recounted how no one believed in her after the ceremony except for Cyclo, which enabled her to move forward. Her tears fell down her face after Cyclo gave her the courage to defy fate when she had given up on everything. Mist could not help but thank her new master for saving her. Meanwhile, inside the carriage, Mist woke up from her dream as they arrived at their destination. She apologized for dozing off, but Cyclo was not bothered by it. He informed her that they were at the mansion of North Foria's lord. Cyclo informed her that he had been in their care for various reasons. Crus arrived to greet their arrival, his excitement displayed as Cyclo visited them again. Crus questioned who his little companion was, while Cyclo introduced Mist as part of the party and asked for a favor from them. They got inside the mansion, while Crus informed Cyclo that he would have everything prepared for them. Mist was confused as to where they were headed. Crus brought them to a large bathroom where the two could take a refreshing bath. Cyclo offered to help Mist take a bath. He innocently noted that Mist was just a kid and her stamina would probably not take a big bath alone. The slave girl suddenly turned shy after his remarks. Mist asked Cyclo how old he thinks she is, to which Cyclo mentioned that she looks like she is 10 years old. She corrected him and informed him that she is 17 years old already. He was shell-shocked after learning her real age, realizing that she already has the skills to take a big bath alone. Silence filled the bathroom for a moment. Cyclo tried to save himself by telling her that being alone is really risky. He promised that he had no hidden agenda, which rendered Mist speechless. She stepped into the water and noted how curious her master was. Cyclo gently gave her a bath, which Mist found considerate. She brought up what happened earlier and suggested getting an order to her. Cyclo remembered the emblem to give orders, but he does not have any intentions of using it on her and wants Mist to have as much freedom as possible. Her face suddenly blushed after hearing his master's remarks. He suddenly noticed Mist's reaction, to which she apologized. She carried a wide smile as she informed Cyclo that his kindness fills her heart with joy. He was rendered speechless, acknowledging her comment. Cyclo waited in a cozy living room after the bath until Mist finally announced her arrival and apologized for her delay. She appeared in a new dress, which made her look more presentable. Cyclo complimented the dress and told her that it looked absolutely stunning on her. She mentioned that the helpers in the mansion dressed her up with Crus' old dresses and even did her hair. Cyclo carried a smile as he saw her so happy. He then proceeded to check her health next. Cyclo used his time storage, looking for one of his energy cubes. Mist displayed her astonishment after seeing her master's skill. He revealed that the energy cube was a dazzling orb that contained his life force. He asked her to take a bite of the energy cubes, causing confusion from her. Cyclo insisted that the energy cube was extraordinary, although the cube did not look edible at all. Her uncertainty displayed, but Cyclo asked her to trust him on the energy cubes. She was hesitant as she tried to take a bite of the energy cube. She finally gathered enough courage to eat the cube, since it was what Cyclo wanted. She suddenly tasted the cube's sweetness, which astonished her. Light emanated from her, causing her to sense something unusual. Mist felt an immense heat, which was a sign of recovery. Magic circles surrounded her while the energy surged through her body. Afterward, she slowly opened her eyes while Cyclo asked her to take a look at the mirror. Her appearance improved as if she grew up, which astonished her after seeing her reflection. Cyclo reiterated the incredible effect of the energy cue, which excited Mist. She grabbed his hand and likened her master to a god. He felt bashful by her comment, but Mist insisted that she was not exaggerating. He explained that when the fiend he fought before almost defeated him, he immediately reached one of his energy cubes to regain strength. Her admiration displayed in her eyes while she looked at her master, bringing her happiness, which she feels is overflowing. He then turned the conversation into a serious note and mentioned the reason why he chose her. He explained that he needed companions to explore the dungeon and he has one order in mind for her. She clenched her dress while he waited for her master's order. While Cyclo could not help but think about his past traumas, he carried a warm and genuine smile while he asked her to believe in him, whatever happens, which rendered her speechless. Mist asked if he was satisfied with his order, to which Cyclo confirmed that he was more than okay with it. Mist thanked her master, asking him to give her his command, while showing the emblem on her neck. Mist acknowledged the hardships that her master experienced, so she hoped that he finds comfort in his only order. Cyclo apologized to Mist, but she grabbed his hand to reassure him. She promised to keep her faith in him, even if there are no commands in their bond of servitude. Cyclo was shocked by her response, which gave him the reassurance that he needed. Cyclo thanked Mist for her understanding. Meanwhile, at the guild, adventurers arrived with confident strides. The other adventurers were astonished to see a party full of S-rank adventurers. One of them asked if there were any interesting things that happened while they were away. The clerk shared that an incredible adventurer just returned from the untapped layers of the deep hole. Kareem, a high-ranking adventurer, displayed her astonishment. She asked the clerk to share the details of the story with her. The next day at the mansion, Cyclo trained Mist to unleash the full potential of her skill. She asked Cyclo if it was really okay to use her skill. She reiterated that her skill was called Cultist, worrying that it might harm him or everyone in the mansion. Cyclo held her hand and noted how kind she was. He reassured her and said he would do anything in his power to handle anything that comes their way. She could not help but feel in awe as she looked at her master. She noted that she understood and promised to do her best. Cyclo informed her that he would help her jumpstart by transferring his magic to her. Cyclo began channeling his energy, eliciting a surprise reaction from her, which he thought that she missed. She explained that she was just caught off guard and proceeded to do it again. Cyclo felt bad for her, discovering that Mist was not able to learn even the simplest skill after acquiring her job skill. Suddenly, she alarms her master, informing him that she seems to get the hang of it. Cyclo is proud of how fast she learns and pats her head, which she finds embarrassing, although she notes that she doesn't mind being complimented. Cyclo notes that it is time to move on to the next stage. He tries to help her locate the magic they found, which can be discovered in several spots in her body. Cyclo notes that he normally has a hard time with this stage, so he sits down as it will take time. Suddenly, Mist informs him that she already found it, which causes surprise from Cyclo. She shares that it is inside her but nowhere at the same time, which is a strange feeling. Then Cyclo asks her to channel some magical energy. Mist focuses her energy and follows Cyclo's instructions. Her magic surges tremendously, while Cyclo notes how the people believe that her skill was cursed. A magic circle appears above them, causing astonishment from Cyclo. He notes that she possesses a healing magic of the divine variety, covering such a wide area. Cyclo is rendered speechless after the discovery. He can't contain his excitement that he hugs Mist and informs her that her magic is similar to that of a holy maiden. He emphasizes how rare it is to see someone with holy magic. His excitement intensifies with her rare wide-area heal. He suddenly realizes that he is already crushing Mist, promising that he will be more careful next time. Mist then regains her focus and prepares her second skill. A large ball of membrane appears around them. Cyclo is astonished to see a seemingly barrier of magical protection. He is impressed that she can already use intermediate light magic at the start. He explains that she can attack and apply debuffs while protecting allies using her light magic. She can also provide support and healing with holy magic. In simple terms, Mist has the ability to use magic for offense, defense, and support all at once. Mist notices how knowledgeable her master is in her own kind of magic. Cyclo suddenly pauses, revealing that his former fiancée had a divine class skill. He becomes emotional, and she realizes that it is a topic they should not touch. Silence suddenly fills the atmosphere. Mist distracts him and suggests diving into the third skill, which excites him. She closes her eyes, learning that her third skill has the ability to fix various things. Cyclo immediately catches on while she explains that she can make a flower bloom with even more life. She also thinks that there is something she can do to revive Cyclo's hair, which turned pure white by the fiend at the deep hole. He is in deep thought, then shares his assumption about his magic, while Mist waits silently. She then uses her third skill, which is the legendary rebirth magic that holds power to revive anything and everything. Mist displays her astonishment at her own legendary skill. She can't believe that she possesses such incredible skills, which Cyclo agrees with. He asks if she only has 3 skills she can wield, but Mist informs him that she still has 2 more to reveal. Cyclo is in deep thought again. He notes that even a saintess can command only 4 skills, which makes Mist potentially stronger than Maria. Cyclo is even more baffled by the fact that Mist was persecuted by the church, despite possessing holy magic. He then questions if the skill selection ceremony is truly justified. He recenters his focus and asks Mist to try her 4th skill. She follows his instruction while energy surges around her. Cyclo is surprised to see wings emerge on his back. She apologizes that her magic activates as long as she channels them, but Cyclo notes that it is fine. He feels like their abilities are on the rise. Mist senses that others' magic is dwindling except for the 2 of them. He realizes that her 4th skill enhances allies' strength while crippling the enemies. He silently describes her skill as outrageous. She informs him that she spends more magic than the previous skills, so Cyclo suggests that they best use it as a trump card. They name her 4th skill as Sanctuary, which makes Mist think for a moment. Cyclo explains that the magic shines brighter when it has a name to wear. Cyclo thinks that her magic seems like their very own sanctuary. Mist repeats the name of her 4th skill, thinking that it has a beautiful name. Cyclo is happy that she likes the name while still giving her the freedom to name her skill herself. The wings suddenly vanish along with the feeling of the rising energy. Cyclo then explains that passive skills maintain various aptitudes like weapon and body enhancements, elemental magic, and more. Meanwhile, active skills trigger when they channel their mana into things like clock generation and sanctuaries. Mist expresses her understanding of the different magic types. She quickly grasps his explanation, which impresses him. They finally decide to dive into her last skill. Suddenly, Mist feels like her body is floating in the air. Cyclo asks Mist to do a little jump. She leaps as he requests, causing her to float in the air. Cyclo manages to catch her after her magic's effect lasts and wonders if her 5th skill is for body enhancement or weapon affinity. He suggests visiting the town to browse some weapons and armor. Mist suddenly asks Cyclo if any of her skills will be of any help to him, causing his master to pause for a moment. Cyclo confirms while noting that she possesses a talent that surpasses even that of a saint. Mist feels relieved and then suggests that he let her down soon from carrying her. He then asks her to grab some lunch before going to town. Meanwhile, he suddenly remembers something about a saint. However, he tries to ground himself and put those past memories to rest, accepting that his and Maria's paths have diverged clearly back then. Mist can't help but feel in awe of the view in an open-air market in North America. Cyclo asks her if she wants a skewer, and although he tries to refuse his generous offer, her master insists on ordering them. Mist blushes as she takes a bite of the food. The 2 enjoy the skewer as they walk through the streets. She suddenly notices her master's reaction. Cyclo informs her that he can't help but feel overjoyed whenever he sees Mist blissfully happy. Her eyes light up while he tells them that he caught her off guard as they explore the town. Citizens talk about the saint training to fight against the army of the Demon King's army. They wonder if she will grace their town with her presence, while Cyclo overhears them. He looks up and thinks about his old friend. Mist questions if it was his former fiancée that the citizens were talking about, which Cyclo confirms. Mist is shocked, while Cyclo clarifies that he already buried her in oblivion. Cyclo reveals his power, while Mist displays her astonishment. He shares that his engagement was called off because of his unknown skill, which is similar to what Mist experienced. He reflects on how Maria turned her back on him so easily. Meanwhile, in the royal capital, the saint prays earnestly while thinking about the hero Raven. She recounts their conversation and Raven acknowledges her efforts. The hero promises that he will do his best for her so that she can reclaim her radiant smile. She continues to pray in hopes that the hero comes back from his expedition. She is suddenly alarmed about a certain trouble. Her anxiousness displays while asking what the problem is. She is informed that her assistant was involved in fraudulent activities. Maria asks the servant to elaborate and provide more information. The servant shares that her assistant deceived Maria of her own earnings and embezzled her personal donations. The saint is rendered speechless, knowing that her assistant was accused of sending allowances and letters to Cyclo. She then wonders if Cyclo is telling the truth that he did not receive any allowance or letter from the church. She relives her previous encounter with Cyclo, judging him for a crime he did not commit. Maria falls to the ground, recounting what happened the day before the trial. She remembered when Raiden first talked to her about Cyclo. Raven told her that Cyclo got nabbed with charges of serial assault. She insisted that he was wrongfully charged. Raven mentioned the money she had been sending him, then lied about Cyclo using it to fuel his own desires. Maria could not accept that Cyclo would turn into a criminal, which left her heartbroken. She suddenly stopped when Raven covered her eyes with his hand. Raven comforted Maria and encouraged her to go to the trial to uncover the truth for themselves. She pauses momentarily. Maria grabbed his arm with her hands and accepted his comfort. She wonders if Raven really did Cyclo wrong and wants to believe that he is really a good person. Days have passed until Maria welcomes Raiden's return from his expedition. The hero promises to take her with him once her training is complete. He notices that Maria looks weary. She confronts him and asks if he was aware of her assistant's fraudulent activities when he told him about Cyclo. She questions him why he gave her such negative testimony about Cyclo when he did not even receive the money. Raiden suddenly carries a menacing face and calls her slow for her late realization. Maria is rendered speechless after seeing his true colors. He revealed that Bujin asked him to frame Cyclo with a false charge. He notes how foolish the masses are to easily believe anything simply because someone of high status says so. Maria's disdain is evident while looking at the scoundrel. She calls him a scoundrel, while Raiden shows no remorse for his actions. Maria walks away, but he violently grabs her hand. She warns him of exposing his wrongdoings. She spoke with contempt as she told him she would never forgive him. Raven mocks her for acting superior to others. He grabs her violently, which causes her to struggle. Raven looks at her ominously and informs Maria that she is already an accomplice. The saint is rendered speechless while Cyclo's memory flashes before her eyes. She recounts his promise to come back to her, which turns into an image of Cyclo's confused and hurt face while being abandoned by Maria. Maria falls to the ground as she realizes that she drove Cyclo into the depths of hell. Tears well up from her eyes, which show her guilt. Raven looks down on her while calling Maria his partner in crime as he manipulates her to fulfill his desires. Meanwhile, Cyclo believes that Maria is getting chummy with Raven, who has the hero skill. He admits that he can't bring himself to hate them, thinking that he will never meet them again. Mist expresses her compassion and tries to understand his pain. Cyclo looks at her with a gentle smile, telling her that seeing her happy lights up his world and considers her as his reward. Mist is rendered speechless, then closes her eyes as she accepts his kind words. Mist gets up and faces Cyclo. She carries a wide smile as she gladly accepts his generosity. Cyclo is pleased by her answer, while Mist asks him to return to their task to check some weapons afterward. Mist comes out of the fitting room wearing her new dress and weapon, making Cyclo blush at her appearance. He tells her that she looks like an adventurer from any angle, relieving Mist by his comment. She tries her new staff and feels like she can master both magic and fighting using the weapon. The two celebrate while the tailor is happy to see them enjoy each other's company. The staff notices that her boss seems thrilled, to which the tailor confirms. Cyclo is surprised to learn that the tailor once dreamed of being an adventurer. The old man mentions that it was just a childhood dream and had to set it aside to pursue his job skills. Cyclo pauses for a moment, recounting his childhood where he used to create magical tools. The tailor wishes them to have a magnificent adventure for him as well. Mist notices that the tailor seems a bit downcast, which Cyclo agrees with. He acknowledges the feeling when one does not fulfill their dreams, despite reaching the pinnacle of their career. Mist asks her master if he ever had a dream of his own. He promises to tell her when he is close to achieving it. He then returns to the guild, where he is warmly welcomed by the staff. He registers Mist to become an adventurer, while the latter feels nervous about the process. The staff hands them a form that they need to fill out with Mist's information. She completes the form immediately, while the staff reads her information aloud about her status as a slave. Her voice is loud when she reads her heretic skill. The adventurer's attention is drawn to her, causing her to feel anxious after being judged right away. A loud noise resounds through the guild as someone clarifies if Mist is really a heretic. Cyclo carries a stern gaze while Mist hides behind him. Shun, a holy knight and an S rank, confronts them. Shun questions why he is minding their business, while Shun points him to his emblem. Cyclo responds that he has no idea what the emblem means and confidently confirms that Mist is a heretic. Shun feels insulted, asking him to go outside with him so he can teach Cyclo some manners. Cyclo confidently accepts his challenge until Guan appears on the scene and takes charge of the duel as the guild master. The situation becomes tense as the adventurers murmur inside the guild, while Guan prepares them for a proper duel, which is fitting for two high-ranking adventurers. Shun finds Guan's suggestion interesting. He orders Cyclo to follow him to the training ground for their duel. Shun confidently believes that he can easily defeat Cyclo, whom he thinks is just a C-rank adventurer. The citizens gather outside while Cyclo questions the Holy Knight's identity. Shun appears to be a spear saint who works closely with the church. Guan mentions that he just come from an expedition, which explains why Cyclo is unaware of him. He then realizes why Shun got heated when he heard about the heretic skill. Cyclo turns to Mist, who is visibly anxious. He reassures her and promises to come back victorious, which relieves her and removes her doubts. Cyclo and the Holy Knight stand face to face at the training ground. The other adventurers are confident that Shun will win the duel, while his cheerleaders gush over him in the audience. Meanwhile, Kim hides herself amongst the crowd as she quietly observes her brother. Shun displays his condescending attitude while Cyclo just rides with it. Guan sets the rules that the outcome will be determined by either surrender or incapacitation. Shun demands that Mist will not be granted adventurer registration and refuses to acknowledge her as a human if he wins the duel. Cyclo displays his ominous aura while telling Shun that he shall never meddle with Mist again after their duel. The Holy Knight prepares for the duel with his spear. Guan starts the battle while he strikes with incredible speed. He is confident that Cyclo will not be able to dodge his attacks, so he carefully spares his vital spots since it is only a duel. Cyclo dodges Shun's attack effortlessly, following with the release of his weapon using his time magic. Cyclo swings his sword, which breaks Shun's spear. The Holy Knight is in disbelief after seeing his pitiful weapon's fate. Cyclo carries a stern gaze as he brings the Holy Knight to his end. Cyclo delivers a powerful kick to Shun, sending the Holy Knight crashing to the ground. Shun crashes into the wall and loses consciousness. The onlookers are rendered speechless after his immediate defeat. Guan then declares that Cyclo wins the duel. He stands confidently while the onlookers start to admire him. Mist rushes to him, while Cyclo mentions that they win just like he promised. The crowd then cheers for him, while Cyclo and Mist celebrate together. Guan addresses everyone and emphasizes that Cyclo is unstoppable. He warns them not to cross him as party members, regardless of their job skills. He can't contain how proud he is of Cyclo, announcing that he is the only adventurer to delve into the depths of the deep pole and crown with the elusive SS rank. The onlookers are shell-shocked by what Guan just announced. Their admiration intensifies upon seeing a living legend before them. Cyclo and Mist are astonished by the overwhelming attention that they get from the crowd. The adventurers gush over him and call him the mightiest adventurer. They even call him a hero, gaining admiration from the other adventurers who once doubted him. Cyclo thinks that he facilitated the duel for this very purpose, knowing that he will pulverize Shun in an instant. Cyclo suddenly carries Mist and notes that they need to get back to work. He suddenly jumps over the tall wall to escape from the crowd as it starts to get noisier. His immense speed displays as he uses a flash step. Harem remains hidden amongst the crowd and suddenly disappears as his brother escapes from the scene. Cyclo finally stops and informs Mist that they are away from the crowd already. He apologizes to Mist that her grand debut as an adventurer will have to wait until tomorrow. Mist feels bashful and asks him to give her a heads up next time he will carry her, as it flusters her when he gets really close to her. Cyclo is rendered speechless as he turns red. He apologizes immediately while Mist mentions that it is not a big deal and mental preparation is all she needs. Suddenly, Kareem appears at the scene and calls their attention. She asks if they can have a little conversation with her. She acknowledges that Cyclo defeated Shun, who was an S-rank adventurer. Cyclo is astonished that she manages to catch up with his speed, causing him to wonder what her deal is.